Hi, this is Emmy, and I'm the FU Fibro lady. So, a woman reached out to me on Facebook. Her name's Molly Brower, and she just finished writing a book called Recovered Fibro Warriors. And she asked me if I would be willing to write a short story about my experiences with fibromyalgia. And I did, and I thought I would share it with you. It's a little longer than I usually do, so sit back and listen or not. Here we go. When I entered private school in the fifth grade, I learned the true meaning of stress. There was a ton of homework, the expectations were extremely high, and the competition was intense. But it was in the eighth grade that the bullying began, and I really started feeling the pain. When I graduated high school, two guys assaulted me, and the night terrors began. My first year at college in the beautiful mountains of Virginia made my situation worse. I befriended a black man, which as a white woman was taboo in this Baptist community, and I immediately became targeted by narrow-minded and racist people. I gained a lot of weight, had few friends, and knew that this ignorant and toxic community was not for me. The following year, my grandfather died, and I was devastated. He was my neighbor, traveling companion, and overall favorite grandparent. His death was really hard on me, but I'm convinced that he was responsible for bringing my husband, Mark, into my life during that time. I'm happy to say Mark and I have been together since 1984, the year Grandpa passed. A few years later, my father was electrocuted in a horrific accident at the tender age of 60 and subsequently died. It was a terrible time in all of our lives, and the impact of his accident was catastrophic on our entire family. Ironically, my first child was born the day after he died. Whenever I reflect on the good and the bad things that have happened in my life, I realize that my experiences have solidified my belief in silver linings in the circle of life. My fibro symptoms began when I was 13 and continued to get worse as I got older. Throughout the years, I have gone to a myriad of doctors and was dismissed by all of them. I can't tell you how many physicians said, "You look good." Well, I sure as hell didn't feel good. Since my husband and I own two beauty salons in Rochester, New York, I've always prided myself as looking as good as possible in spite of how I felt. I'm convinced that the better you look, the better you feel. I try to exercise daily, drink a lot of water, and cook healthy and gourmet meals. From the outside, I do look perfectly fine, so that most doctors have never taken me seriously. I have to admit that I'll never understand why anybody succumbs to looking crappy, even if that is how he or she is feeling. Take a shower, brush your hair, put on clean clothes that you haven't worn to bed, and even brushing your teeth can all do wonders to your spirit. There is no way staying in bed in a disheveled state will help anyone's situation, unless they're looking for sympathy and enjoy residing in a woe is me existence. Personally, I don't want pity, and I never have, which is one of the reasons I want to help others. How does pity make me feel better? It absolutely does not. I much prefer when people are shocked when I tell them I have fibromyalgia. That means I'm not letting it win. It wasn't until I was 35 years old that a rheumatologist actually diagnosed me with this bizarre affliction. Finally, I had a name to all the weird things that plagued my body. It was such a relief to know that I wasn't a hypochondriac. The test is very obscure, and when she told me she would be touching 18 points on my body, I laughed. It didn't seem like a legitimate way of assessing one's health, but I went with it. She told me that if 11 spots in my body were tender, then I had fibro. When she did the tender point test, I was 18 for 18. She was shocked, and so was I. I couldn't believe how slight pressure on random parts of my body could be so sensitive and hurt so badly. She told me that she didn't expect me to react so strongly to the test and was surprised by my sensitivity to each point because, frankly, I didn't fit the criteria. I wasn't overweight, depressed, or lethargic. So how could this be? I was diagnosed in the year 2000, and after she completed my exam, she said there was nothing she could do for me. Knowing that I wasn't crazy was very reassuring, but sometimes I wish I hadn't been labeled with this. If you believe you are incapable, you will never succeed. And knowing that I could blame my pain on something was a good and a bad thing wrapped up in one confusing package. It wasn't until I struggled with menopause and got diagnosed with even more health problems that I realized I had more control over this thing than I thought. I had to stop thinking of myself as a fibro sufferer and more as a fibro survivor. I came to that same realization with my neck injury, and it has been life-changing. I have a herniation in my neck, degenerative disc disease, arthritis, scoliosis, perichondral process, and even nerve compression. When I look at the imaging of my neck, I feel like a 100-year-old lady. The scope of my damage of my entire cervical area is discouraging, overwhelming, and downright depressing. Sometimes I wish I never saw what was wrong, because knowing how bad it is can really mess with your head. Pun intended. But I made the conscious decision to stop bitching and learn to adapt, because there are so many people out there that have it much worse than I do. Even though I've approached all of my ailments in a pretty positive way throughout my life, I've gone through an amazing change the past few years by altering my mindset even more dramatically. The change has been miraculous. I've accepted my injuries, and I'm making adjustments so I can still live an active and fulfilling life, and it's working. I have to salute my parents for how I've responded to living in chronic pain and how I've dealt with all the crap I faced in my life. As a teenager, when I'd wake up in the morning before school and complain that I didn't feel well, they would make me shower, get dressed, and then eat something. When I was all ready for school, we would reassess how I felt. It's no surprise that I always felt better once I started moving. It's not rocket science, my friends. Staying in bed and wallowing in self-pity is a blatant waste of time, and life is too damn short to waste any time. I never realized how fortunate I was to be the recipient of their fortitude, resilience, and perseverance towards life. They believed in working hard, being productive, and most importantly, being happy. My mom and dad were both extremely positive people, and it was this type of positivity that has ultimately saved me. I believe fibromyalgia is caused by trauma, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological. For some reason, fibro sufferers can't deal with the stressors in their lives, and their bodies respond with heightened sensitivities to pain, as well as other random external stimuli. I believe it is when we recognize how the negativity from a traumatic event affects our bodies that we can truly make a change. I have a lot of aches, pains, and injuries. Many are from my repetitive career as a Brazilian wax technician, and some are just normal degeneration because I'm older. I don't blame my tendonitis, arthritis, or degenerative disc disease on the fibro, however. They are all separate issues. The achiness in my limbs, the fatigue, and the random intermittent confusion in my brain are fibrocatalysts, but these symptoms can be controlled. You just have to want it bad enough. Since I've been dealing with this for over 40 years, I've come to some eye-opening realizations. We can control these fibro conditions with diet, exercise, and a positive mindset. I kept a journal for years to figure out what external factors triggered the fibro symptoms. Certain foods, liquids, and even smells can be a trigger. But the number one factor that can trigger a flare-up is stress and how we respond to the stressors in our lives. That's why I've been working on a motivational memoir for the past 3 years called FU Fibro, How I Found Happy, because I have a plethora of suggestions, recommendations, and words of encouragement to help others who suffer with this condition. Never underestimate the power of a positive mindset and your sheer fortitude in overcoming adversity. You have got to let the negative crap go, or you will never feel better. I never refer to fibromyalgia as a disease because it isn't life-threatening. My sister has stage 4 metastatic cancer. She's the one you should be praying for because her time is limited and she is suffering a horrific existence right now. And although fibro isn't life-threatening, some of the medications that are prescribed for fibro can be, which is why I don't take anything but natural supplements like vitamin D and fish oil. I acknowledge that it can be tough to get out of bed every morning after a lousy night's sleep, especially when your body's hurting. But that's when you've got to say, F you, fibro, and make it the best day ever. Thanks for listening.